Welcome to Wellness is a Way of Life, the podcast for female leaders seeking sustainable energy, clarity, and confidence. I'm Megan Swan, your guide on a journey to mastering wellness as an integrated part of your life. Let's explore personalized wellness strategies that truly resonate with who you are. Welcome, Eliza, to Wellness is a Way of Life. I'm so excited for this interview. I've been following you for a while now, and I'm a huge fan of your products. We'll get all into that. First, just a little introduction. You have been an entrepreneur since, I love how you say this, even knowing what that word meant or what it was, operating a successful lemonade stand or charging the kids in the neighborhood for gymnastics lessons, of even when you weren't, a registered gymnast or anything. And you've always loved turning ideas into tangible businesses. You have extensive experience doing that. We'll get all into the 4 salons that you ran and opened in Vancouver and your latest venture. And I'm so excited, particularly because we're both moms and entrepreneurs. I really hate the whole mompreneur term per se, but I love how real you are, specifically on Instagram, where I connect with you. In terms of making it you just have it all out there. So let's dive in. Start with, how are you today on a Monday?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, let's start with your, maybe not as far back as the lemonade stand, but
yeah.
When did you feel like you were an entrepreneur and kind of own that title?
Ooh, that's an excellent question. I guess I probably felt like I was an entrepreneur when I started my career as a hairstylist. I was an assistant to a salon owner, but then on the side, he would allow me to take my own clients. So before my shift, in the evenings, the days the salons were closed, I started to build a clientele. And that was kind of my first taste of actually providing a service and having people pay me and me doing, all the things that you have to do to run your own service-based business. So that's probably when I first felt like, oh, okay, I've got a little business going. But funny enough, prior to that, in university, I did a study abroad in Kenya for a semester at a university there. And most people did not know how to type. So when I watched in the computer labs, people would be kind of hunting and pecking when they're trying to type up their essays. So to make a little bit of side money, I started putting posters up and said, hey, I'll type up your reports. I'll type up your essays for you. 15 shillings a page is, I think, of what I charged. So I did have a little tiny side business in university, being a professional typist. But I wouldn't say, I think it wasn't until I started my hair career that I could confidently say I'm an entrepreneur.
And can you pinpoint back to something, either in university or in your childhood because let's get your opinion first. My experience growing up in Canada is I wasn't really around a lot of entrepreneurs. I was more around people in the sort of classic professions. And I didn't feel this energy of like every idea is a good idea, like
totally
executing and going for it. Yeah. Where did you find that inspiration and sort of permission?
It's so interesting because I have no idea. Because both my parents had careers where they got their job and they stayed in their job for 30 plus years. My mom was a teacher. My dad worked in insurance. So I didn't see anyone model entrepreneurship or, model taking an idea and turning an idea into a tangible thing. So I really have no idea where it came from. And I love kind of the question of like, are entrepreneurs born or made? Because I've truly seen both happen. I really believe that I was born an entrepreneur because as a young child, I was like always trying to figure out ways to make money. But then my husband, who never ever thought he was going to have his own business, it wasn't something he was thought about or passionate about. I've watched him like grow into a phenomenal entrepreneur. So I don't know where it came from. I just know that for myself, it was there at a very, very, very young age. But I did have to get over definitely some insecurities. I remember in high school, I didn't take any business classes whatsoever because I hated math. And I thought that, well, if I'm naturally not good at math, then that means I'm not going to be good at business. So, but it really came down to my first year of university. I thought I was going to go to university for kinesiology, but just on a whim took an intro to business class because there was no prerequisites for it. And realized, oh, there's so much more to this than just accounting. And I fell in love with it. And after one semester, switched my major to business. So,
I love that. And I think that's a really common misconception, particularly for women. I would say it's maybe even kind of like a gatekeeper thing. Like if you're not a finance whiz, then you have no right to be in business. So I love that you pointed that out. I would love to hear more about the transition from, owning and running salons and this latest venture. Like what was the progression to make that leap into a product?
yeah. So the progression happened. I would say it really kind of started back in 2020. Um, I mean, needless to say, I think every business owner struggled and gained about 10 years experience of business management in a short amount of time. So for me, it was really surviving the pandemic, surviving having brick and mortar businesses that were closed for almost 3 months and, retaining my employees and making sure that everyone was okay. I really started to feel burnt out back then. I felt like, wow, I'm really not equipped for the constant barrage of changes that we're having to adapt to and everything over and over again. So I really felt like after 2020, then I got pregnant and I had two babies in 2 years with no maternity leave, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to me on that. And I really started to feel like I wasn't doing either thing well. I didn't feel like I was being the mom that I wanted to be, and I didn't feel like I was being the business leader that I wanted and knew that I could be because I had been that in the past. And so I really started taking a hard look at what is bringing me joy, what is bringing me enormous amounts of stress. Am I still as passionate about this as I once was? And really came down to, am I happy? And it took me, several years of kind of processing that and getting to that point where I could finally say out loud, oh, I don't think that this is what I want to do anymore. And that's really what made me start to think, okay, well, what is my exit strategy here? And then what do I want to do next? So, and I've said this before, it took a lot of therapy because I truly thought that owning salons was what I was going to do for my whole life. I pictured myself doing that until retirement. And I really had to kind of grapple with, what am I without this thing that has become a big part of my identity? And once I realized that, it was a quote, I think, on Dragon's Den that really helped. And it was like, entrepreneurs are so much more than one good idea. You're more than your best idea. And I was like, more ideas will come. And even though I've poured a decade into this thing, it doesn't mean that my ideas will stop coming. So that's when I started the process of looking to find some potential buyers for my business, because I really did want to see the business continue on and be a successful entity. And that was kind of the point the whole way through, of growing a brand and building locations and building systems that were bigger than myself so that it could exist on its own. So I thankfully found an amazing buyer that wanted to take on the brand, take on all the locations, take what I had created and continue to build on that. And once I knew that that was going to go through, and it was quite a long process. I thought selling a business would be a lot faster, but from start to finish, it was almost 9 months, I believe. So in that time, then I started to think about, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And I just knew from the phase of life that I'm in right now, I was like, I know that I need a business that I don't physically need to be in every day. I want to do something that I can do from my home or do from a coffee shop, do from wherever, that will allow me freedom to be with my kids. and that preferably for at least a while I can do without employees because I just need to simplify. And that which led me to now Lavoh, which is the reusable makeup remover face cloths. I had used it as a product for several years. I'd been given one as a sample from one of my salon suppliers and found this product, fell in love with it, told everyone in my life who wore makeup, told them about it. And I realized, okay, there's this thing that I'm like naturally selling, and the majority of people that I talk to have never heard about it before. Why not take this and make it my own? And when I started talking to people and just kind of, testing the waters of what, if people would be interested, and I really found that most people had never heard of it, which told me, okay, there's room in the market for me. And that's what kind of gave me the confidence to switch things up. Yes, start another business, but start a product-based business in front of us instead of a service-based business, which there's a lot of business principles that overlap, but it's also like a brand new learning curve for me.
Oh, so many follow-up questions. Well, let's start with, like, I should have bought 100 from you at the Calgary Stampede because I've like given them to so many women in my life, and that's going to be one of my go-to gifts, like for the next several years, probably, because
appreciate that.
I've made like other fans for you because they're just so amazing. Something about the texture, the colors, and I think most women are pretty clear that it's just not ideal, not sustainable to either be using some sort of throwaway pad product that has cleaner on it, or to be using those little cotton balls, or even just like to be using another product. I don't know. Just I'm blown away with the quality, and I think you've really fallen onto something. So there's that first off.
Thank you.
And I'd love for you to back up a little bit. If that time that you mentioned therapy, but was it because we birth businesses at like we birth ideas, especially as women, like that ownership, and like you wanting to have it not, really thrive without you.
Right.
You've brought it to this world, but you want it to be happy and successful, but not necessarily need your mothering for your entire life, But was part of it for you feeling like a failure if you opted out and got out?
Definitely there was a failure piece for sure, because I really felt like I wanted to be that woman that could do it all and do it all at the same time. And I think getting to a point where I essentially like had it all, like have my children, have my career, have this business, and then not feeling like it was fulfilling me in the way that I thought it would, felt kind of strange. And there's this one Michelle Obama quote that sticks out, and she's like, you can have it all, just not at the same time. And that one kind of struck me because I'm like, I just felt like for me personally, I wasn't able to give 110% to my business and 110% to my kids at the same time. I really, really, really wanted to. I wanted to be like the exception to the rule. And then in the midst of it, and then with, postpartum hormones and just post-COVID life and everything being like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. There's definitely an aspect of feeling like, oh man, but some other women out there are doing it all and seem to be really happy. So I had to kind of put that aside and be like, yeah, but you're the one that's living this life. And is this life making you happy and fulfilling you right now? And then I think there was also a piece of worrying about outside appearances, because I knew that my strategy for my first year of business with Lavoh was going to be to do a lot of in-person trade shows, markets, pop-up shops. And it felt like a little bit of an ego thing for me of like, I used to have beautiful brick and mortar stores, and now I'm standing behind a table that I had to set up, and almost feeling like somehow that was a little bit less than, and just worried about like, what are people going to think? They're going to be like, oh wow, she really downgraded. Like she used to have these businesses and now she's at a trade show. That's, oh poor, you know what I mean? Like I had this thing in my head of somehow, being worried about what people would think about that. But again, I just kept coming back to, okay, but what makes you happy? What is bringing you joy? And what I had wasn't bringing me joy. And the idea of a new venture and starting something brand new was so exciting for me. And now I do my trade shows and I do my markets and everything all the time. And yes, sometimes when I'm like schlepping a 10-foot tent and tables on my like kids' wagon at a market on a Friday night, I'm like, oh, but I'm really enjoying it. And so I guess that has outweighed kind of those moments of insecurity that bubble up.
Well, kudos, by the way, like 2 babies in 2 years, that is no joke. I mean,
Thank you. Yeah.
and so what has helped you be okay, or like, are you focusing or surprised, I guess, maybe by aspects of this, non-glamorous version of business, or, how you positioned that to yourself at some point? Are there aspects of trade shows, let's say, that surprised you that you're like, this is actually like better for me, or this actually resonates more with how I work or think?
I think nothing was too surprising, but because I have actually worked quite a few markets and trade shows with friends' businesses, just helping them out in the past. So I kind of knew like the setup and how it all kind of worked. I think what really surprised me though was my target demographic for my business. I had an idea of who my ideal client was, and through doing, over the last 6 months doing multiple trade shows and markets, it's shown me that my like bread and butter clients are actually a different age bracket than what I originally thought. So in the beginning, I was picturing, my main clients were going to be probably young girls in their 20s who shop at Sephora and are on social media all the time. And through all these in-person market, I've realized that a huge part of my clientele is women in their 40s and 50s who have never heard about this product before, because they're maybe not on TikTok, or they're not on these things where they're seeing all like the trendy products. They're willing to invest in products that are more practical, not necessarily like the shiny, sparkly new whatever. And so that has been huge for me, is just really, and I wouldn't have known that had I not done these in-person things for, standing there for hours, just talking to people, talking to people, talking to people. And I'm so thankful for that experience, and that I've got markets and trade shows and pop-ups lined up, like multiple every month from now till Christmas. So it's just such good market research. And so I think that was a big surprising thing for me, of like, oh, my demographic is different than what I thought it would be.
It's me. No.
Yeah.
It's me and all my friends. So I love that. And by the way, if you are not in an area where she might be hitting you up at a trade show, you can buy them off the website. And I believe you're now on Amazon as well.
I'm
like
Canadian and American.
There's no resistance to finding.
Yeah.
I would love, are you going to make like an entire giant towel of that fabric?
I've had people ask me for robes, for blankets, which I was like, that'd be hilarious. Like a makeup remover robe where you just like wipe your face with your arms. Just like one-stop shop. No, right now, I'm just focusing on the face gloves, just because like I said, there's so many people who have never heard about it before. I'm really trying to just hone in to do one thing, and one thing really, really well, and focus on that education piece, because I know that there's so many more customers out there that have never even heard of it.
Yeah. And it comes back to your original plan of dialing it down, simplicity, and keeping it. Yeah. Kind of user friendly as a super busy mom. So besides the hilarious updates on Instagram here and there in terms of juggling, like what sort of, can you share one of your more hilarious juggling motherhood and entrepreneurship moments?
I had one the other day. I had a market on Friday night, and Rob was working all day. So I was home with the kids before the market, and we live in an apartment building, and our storage unit is on a different floor than when we are. So I had to go get a 10-foot tent, which is 60 pounds, 2 tables, a chair, a wagon, at least 60 pounds worth of leg weights for the tent, all of that, and pack up my car with my 2-year-old and my 3-year-old in tow. And they're just so happy to come with me wherever, and whatever I'm doing, they're excited to be a part of. But I was like literally sweating buckets trying to like carry all this stuff. And oh, my son wanted to bring, my 2-year-old wanted to bring his full size basketball, and my daughter wanted to bring her push bike. So we're in the we're in the elevator. I've got like a tent, I've got all this stuff, and we get down to the parkade. The door opens, and my 2-year-old runs out. It's thankfully in like a little enclosed that you have to get through one more door to get to the parkade. But my son runs out. My daughter's like messing around with her bike. I'm like, Remy, you gotta get out, gotta get out. Like we have to get out. And she's just being so awkward with her bike. She can't get out the door, and the door closes. So I'm instantly like, open door, open door, open door. And the elevator starts going back upstairs. And my 2-year-old is like in the parkade, and I'm panicking. And Remy just starts bawling her eyes out. She's like, we lost Beck. We lost him. And I'm just like, no, Remy, no. And I'm like pressing to go back down. And of course, it goes up to like the 6th floor and stops on every floor on the way down. I'm there with my tent. She's crying. People keep coming into the elevator. And I'm like, can we please go back down? My toddler's in the parkade. And oh my gosh, it was just so chaotic. And I could hear him as we got closer. I could hear him crying. Everything
Oh,
was a mess. I was just like so sweaty. We get to the bottom. The 3 of us are just like holding each other and crying. And it was like, this is why when I say you got to get out of the elevator quickly, you have to get out of the elevator. I swear, like by the time we got it all packed up and back up to the house, like thankfully I hadn't done my makeup yet because I was just like drenched in sweat, just like, and now I have to go do a market and set all this up again. But that's kind of like a typical shenanigans, typical morning with 2 toddlers while you're just trying to get stuff done.
yeah. Oh my goodness, that must have been so stressful.
So stressful.
And as a mom, like it was probably 5 minutes, but seemed like an hour that you
Oh,
were managing
absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I love how you hold yourself as a leader in the entrepreneurial space. Can you share with us, some things that have really fed that sense of owning yourself as a leader in the entrepreneurial space over the years?
Definitely. I think it definitely comes in waves. There's certain days where you definitely don't feel like a leader or confident or anything like that. I think having the salons and having, by the time I sold, having a staff of about 30 people amongst the 4 locations, just strictly from practice, you just build a thicker skin. I remember the first time that I had to have kind of a difficult conversation with a stylist. I was almost sick to my stomach. And that was, in my first month of business. And then when you just practice that over and over and over again, having the hard conversations, setting boundaries, realizing like, oh, I've maybe given too much freedom here and I'm getting walked over. I want to improve and do this better next time. Just like putting in the time where now, I mean, nobody really loves having a difficult conversation or having conflict. But I think just from years of practicing that over and over and over again, I realized I won't die. I'm not going to die if I have a hard conversation, or I'm not going to, if I'm, have a speaking engagement or I'm teaching and I'm so nervous ahead of time. Just by facing it and doing it, I've proven to myself that I will not die. And in those moments when you're feeling like you're having conflict, or it feels like the worst thing ever, or you're so nervous about something, in those moments you literally can feel like I would rather die than do this. But just strictly from having that practice over and over again, I think is where I've gotten some of that confidence to be a leader. And then a huge part of it too is just connecting with other, in my case particularly, female identifying entrepreneurs, and realizing it that we all struggle with the same things. We all feel insecure about different things. We all feel like we're less than in some areas, and realizing that it's really a collective experience. There's so many other women before me, so many women behind me that have experienced the same thing, and you're not alone. And there's something really comforting in that.
I'd love to know, with Lavoh, your face cloths, was it a process to get to the point that you wanted to make whatever the product was, whatever your next venture was, you were conscious that it's sustainable. It's making the world a better place. It's making it easier for women. It's improving lives. What was that thought process, and did it evolve as you figured out what you were going to be selling?
Definitely. So I knew right from the start that this was the product that I wanted to do. So thankfully, it didn't take me too long. It wasn't like, I had 10 to 20 ideas for different products. It was really like I knew I wanted to do this product. It was mostly about how was I going to do it and differentiate myself. Because I did have that moment of insecurity of like, well, I'm not the inventor. So what gives me the right to start my own brand? But then I was like, Eliza, I've seen really successful scrunchie companies and like pop up in the last couple of years. Are they the inventor of the scrunchie? No, they're not. They took it, they put their thumbprint on it, they put their spin on it, and they have their unique selling proposition. So I kind of always kept that in the back of my mind whenever I felt insecure about doing a product that's already been done. But what did take me a while was to figure out the quality, to figure out the colors. That was a really big part. It took me a while to figure out where I was going to get it manufactured. In the beginning, I was really hoping that I could find a material that was made from, say, bamboo or something like that. But the more I researched about the products, the more I researched about what I wanted it to do, I realized that going with a really high quality microfiber was the only way to get me the results that I wanted from the product. I continue to brainstorm and look at ways that in the future maybe I could move towards using like recycled material, that sort of thing. But in order to move to recycled material, you have to order in such vast quantities, and my business just isn't there yet.
Mhm.
So I kept coming. I would get samples, and then I would figure out what I wanted to change about it. Then I would get samples, and then I'd refine, and then I would get samples, and this wasn't quite right. So it took me about from kind of like writing my business plan and having inception to actually having a physical product in my hand that I was really proud of was about 10 months. And a lot of that process was just back and forth tweaking, testing from different manufacturers. So I've got buckets of my test cloths at home. So now my kids play with them. Remy makes little beds for her stuffed animals with them, and I've got so many of them. And I'm always going to keep a couple of my like original prototypes to like show where I eventually came from. But yeah, it took about 10 months to kind of get it to where I wanted it to be.
I don't know how you ended up picking up the colors, because I feel like it's a very unique kind of, select few colors, but it just so resonates with me. And I think also like the texture, like I've really never felt anything like them. And then the fact that you don't need to put anything on it besides water. Oh, I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
So, we'll share obviously in the show notes all the ways that people can connect with you and, find your product. I just love if there's any last little bits of wisdom or inspiration that you would tell someone who's considering, jumping into their own entrepreneurial idea.
Absolutely. I would say surround yourself with people that are going to be brutally honest with you. I thankfully have some phenomenal people in my life that I can bounce ideas off of and that will tell it to me straight. And I think that that's really invaluable, especially when you're in the beginning process trying to figure out exactly what you want to do, or you're coming up with your branding or anything like that. Have have a select few people that will be really, really honest with you, because having those people can really help shave a lot of time off of, time and costly mistakes. And thankfully I had those people. And that's really how I came up with my branding. It's how I came up with my name. I had some very different ideas on what I thought it was originally going to look like, but thankfully I had people that were like, well, what about this? Have you thought about this? Or I don't think that that's going to work because of X, Y, and Z. And then just continue to ask questions. I know that's probably cliche, but just be a sponge and absorb as much as you can. If you see a brand and you love what they're doing, reach out to them, ask if you can take them out for a coffee, pick their brain. People love to share about what they're doing. So that's another thing I did early on, was just different kind of leaders in the space. I would just be like, hey, I'm starting this business. I've been watching your journey. I love how you do it. Can I take you out for coffee and just ask you questions? And have gotten a lot of inspiration, but also really good contacts from that. And I think people are really open to kind of sharing. And so I would just say, continue to ask questions and ask advice.
Yeah. So what's one piece of advice that you received in that process?
Ooh, one piece of advice that I got was to think about where you want your product to be a year from now. So I knew that this year I was really going to focus on online and in markets. And so there were certain things that you can, get away with when you're just selling direct to consumer. You don't have to worry as much about, say, what a big retail chain is going to require from you.
Mm-hmm.
But the advice that I got was, think about where you want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, and try and work some of those things into your packaging and into your branding now, even though you don't feel like you're going to be there soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when an opportunity arises, you don't have to go back to the drawing board and you're not, hustling and scrounging to try and get things done. So a lot of that came down to my packaging decisions that I made, getting UPC and barcodes much earlier than was actually necessary, making sure that my packaging was like compliant with Canadian labeling standards, even though when you're at, a local market, nobody's checking that. If you have that in place already, when big opportunities come up, you're ready to run with it. So I would say, don't just look at your next 3 to 6 months. Look at, okay, where do I want to be? What are some things that I can put in place now that's going to make my life easier down the line if a big opportunity arises?
Yeah, I like that. Like when Amazon calls and says, hey, we need you.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is your preferred way for people to reach out and either pick your brain if you're invite you for coffee, or buy some incredible makeup?
Absolutely. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to pick my brain about anything, I'm very active on Instagram. That's my kind of number one platform that I'm always kind of living on. My personal account is just my name, Eliza Trendiak. And I love when people reach out that I don't know. Also, you can DM me on my brand account, which is Love Lavoh. Both of those come directly to me. I'm the only one that checks it. So if you want to talk to me, message me on there. As far as buying my product, it's super easy, just lavoh.com. Or if you're on Amazon in Canada or in the US, you can also just search Lavoh and I pop up. Both ways are great, honestly. I'm working on building my business both ways. So if you're an Amazon Prime person and you want a face cloth and you need it tomorrow, buy it on Amazon. That makes me very happy. But if you want to maybe get a personalized note from me with your order, buy it through my Lavoh website, because I'm the one that's packing the orders.
I love that. I so appreciate you coming on the podcast, for your time, your wisdom, and your expertise. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Wellness is a Way of Life. Are you ready to make wellness a natural part of your routine? Let's stay connected. Go to meganswanwellness.com. Until next time, live well and thrive.